All right. So, in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful, au nom d'Allah, le Bienfaiteur, le Miséricordieux, nous rendons témoignage de l'unité de Dieu, le Tout-Puissant. Nous lui rendons hommage et nous le remercions pour son intervention parmi l'homme et la femme noire en la personne du maître Farad Mohammed et d'avoir érigé parmi nous un serviteur qui a lui-même fait ériger des géants pour la lutte de notre peuple. Je parle de l'honorable Elijah Mohammed. Et l'une des étoiles qui est à notre avis la plus grande étoile qui est sortie des rangs de l'honorable Elijah Mohammed est aujourd'hui l'homme qui a appelé en 1995 non pas 1 mais 2 millions d'hommes noirs à Washington et qui a rappelé 1 million de familles en 2000 et qui a rappelé en 2005 un front uni entre tous les spectres de la pensée noire et qui a réuni à nouveau en 2015 plus d'1 million d'hommes et de femmes noirs et parmi tous les gens qui veulent l'unité, les gens qui veulent essentiellement la justice. Je parle bien entendu de l'honorable ministre Louis Farrakhan. Et donc, en leur nom, j'aimerais vous saluer, très chers frères et sœurs, dans les salutations de la paix que nous prononçons dans la langue du paradis de nos aïeux. Assalamu alaikum, qui veut tout simplement dire que la paix soit avec vous. Donc, nous allons faire cette présentation en franglais. We have a very special guest with us today, all the way. We really have two special guests, all the way from the Caribbean. We know the situation is very, very serious right now in the world as a whole, and it is most definitely serious as we saw and as we see the crisis in Haiti. But this crisis is affecting all of the Caribbean. And in a time when the European Union is consolidating, even though there's the Brexit, the rest of Europe is trying to unite. We know that the world essentially is trying to consolidate into various pockets of geopolitical forces so that these various nations can thrive. Well, we have dozens of Caribbean nations, and we know the first of which became the first Black free republic and really an empire if you study the history and what that means when Jean-Jacques Dessalines called it the empire of freedom. Haiti, who is in dire crisis today, well, now we know that Caribbean unity, uniting all of those individual islands, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan said, we cannot continue to exist only as individual islands because otherwise America, as it has been, and Europe, as it has been, and even China, as it has been, will continue to use their dominance in order to crush every individual island economically and politically and otherwise. So today we have Dr. Student Minister, the Eastern Regional Representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan out of Trinidad and Tobago, the great scholar, David Mohammed, who will, in light of the current crisis in Haiti, because we know, nous avons un pile haïtien qui sur la ligne, majorité en c'est haïtien nous y. As we have today this crisis, we have a very apt brother to come and deliver a word about the importance of uniting as Caribbean nations. And ultimately, we need to unite all of the Caribbean with all of Black America, with all of Black people in Canada, and ultimately, of course, all of Africa that needs also to unite, as was the vision of the Honorable Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who was from the Caribbean, but who taught Pan-Caribbean, Pan-Africanism. And today, we also need Pan-Caribbeanism. So to introduce Dr. Student Minister David Muhammad, we have the special assistant to the Eastern Caribbean representative, who is coming straight out of St. Vincent. And we know St. Vincent had a trial not so long ago, and we are thankful that our brother came out safely from that trial. This is a brother who used to live in Montreal, who is homebred and homemade, but he decided to go back home to start rebuilding St. Vincent. And all of us in the diaspora needs to now reconsider the responsibility of the diaspora to rebuild the Caribbean nation. So we have our brother who will introduce the Student Eastern Regional representative for the Caribbean, brother Eastern Caribbean Special Assistant from St. Vincent, but originally coming out of Montreal, my brother and my friend, Brother Mikael Muhammad.
One to check. Au nom d'Allah, le bienfaiteur, le miséricordieux, je rends témoignage qu'il n'a d'autre Dieu qu'Allah. Et je rends témoignage que Mohamed est son messager. Premièrement, est-ce que le son passe bien?
Yes, sir. We hear you loud and clear. On t'entend très bien.
C'est avec un grand plaisir, un grand honneur que je participe. Ça fait trop longtemps, ça aurait dû arriver il y a vraiment longtemps. Mais bon, mieux vaut tard que jamais, en espérant qu'on en fera une habitude. Reconnecter avec mes frères et sœurs de Montréal, c'est un grand plaisir. Je m'ennuie beaucoup. J'ai des grands souvenirs. J'ai écouté la présentation de notre frère Roger. Toujours aussi passionné. L'unité pan-caribéenne, pan-africaine. Et surtout présentement dans l'état de crise dans lequel le monde se trouve. Je garde toujours un œil sur les nouvelles à Montréal et je vois de plus en plus d'histoires qui nous font rappeler, malgré maintenant nos enfants étant la, disons, 3e génération en masse d'immigrants des Caraïbes. Les nouvelles semblent nous rappeler, et si ce n'est pas les nouvelles, c'est les journalistes de ces médias, semblent nous rappeler constamment que, comme disait la chanson, comme disait Mosaïen, on t'aime comme t'es si t'es comme nous. Et puis, c'est de plus en plus répété. En fait, je suis un peu content. Je voudrais être parmi vous pour ce combat, mais en regardant ces nouvelles, j'ai toujours à l'esprit constamment this lecture that was given by Minister Farrakhan in 1996 in Toronto. Of course, being in Toronto, we're speaking to a predominantly West Indian gathering of some thousands, in which he focused on the importance of not getting too comfortable in Canada, although things seemed at the time, and most probably still do today, to some extent, especially when we compare ourselves. Fameux dicton, quand on se regarde, on se désole, quand on se compare, on se console. Of course, with our eyes to our brothers and sisters in America, we have a tendency to be complacent in Canada. We have a tendency of saying, well, it's not as bad. But he made it very clear in 1996, which is a whole generation ago, that things would not always be so. He reminded us as immigrant in a land that is not ours. Us as well as the immigrant population of England some dozen years ago. That the clock was ticking, that time was coming when we would have to go home. And he referred to this scripture that I want to quote real quick. He referred to this scripture to support, and we are forever thankful to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, especially in a time like this, in a time of confusion, great confusion. Lots of choices need to be made. Things are changing rapidly, and it becomes more and more confusing for our people to know where a proper stand is for us. Minister Farrakhan referred to this scripture, which can only be understood, this one as well as all the scriptures of the Bible, through the light of the teachings of the Most Honorable Elijah Muhammad, making it now what seems to be ancient history makes sense for us today. And it reads as such. It's Micah chapter 4. But in the last days it shall come to pass that the mountain of the house of the Lord shall be established in the top of the mountains, and it shall be exalted above the hills, and people shall flow unto it. And many nations shall come and say, Come, let us go up to the mountain of the Lord, and to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his path. For the law shall go forth of Zion, and the word of the Lord from Jerusalem, and he shall judge among many people, and rebuke strong nations afar off. And they shall beat their swords into plowshare, and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation shall not lift up a sword against nation, neither shall they learn war any more. But they shall sit every man under his vine and under his fig tree, and none shall make them afraid, for the mouth of the Lord of hosts hath spoken. Pour m'assurer que la compréhension est là et pas perdue en langue de Shakespeare, je le lis de Il arrivera de suite des temps que la montagne de la maison de l'Éternel sera fondée sur le sommet de la montagne, qu'elle s'élèvera par-dessus les collines et que les peuples y habitent. Les nations s'y rendront en foule et diront, venez et montez à la montagne de l'Éternel, à la maison du Dieu de Jacob, afin qu'il nous enseigne ses voies et que nous marchions dans le sentier. Car de Sion et de Jérusalem la parole de l'Éternel. Et il sera le juge d'un grand nombre de peuples, l'arbitre de nations puissantes et lointaines. De leur glaive, ils forgeront des royaumes, et de leur lance des cercles. Une nation ne tirera plus l'épée contre une autre, et l'on n'apprendra plus la guerre. Ils habiteront chacun sous sa vigne et sous son figuier. Il n'y aura personne pour les troubler, car la bouche de l'Éternel des armées a parlé. This particular passage, speaking of being every man under his fig tree and his vine, was explained to us and told to us by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, that it signifies that every man shall live within his own borders, within his own people, in his own nation. And that particular scripture, warning and prophecy, speaks to us, the sense of Israel, who have been, in fact, in exile. And that a time will come, and will be in time as this, where everyone of us must go back home. And oftentimes, being born in another country, we might think, well, this is where I'm born. This is my place. This is my country. The scripture of exile, the stories of exile in the scriptures abound. One in particular, which is the exile of Israelites in Babylon. Now that exile is for a stated period of time, which was 70 years, which is basically 2 generations and a half, after which the king sent back the Israelites to go rebuild Jerusalem. Now it is understood in the scriptures that those that were sent back by Cyrus to rebuild Jerusalem were not those that were taken out in exile out of Israel. They were their children and their children's children. 70 years is 2 generations and a half. And so, although we might feel that we have a citizenship card in our back pocket, we were born and educated and bred in Canada, in Quebec, or in England, it is very important for us to remember. And life, and more, the news reminds us of this. We grew up always knowing that, well, we weren't home. Even as children, we heard our parents always talk about home, la calle. And we knew they meant those that came from Haiti in the 60s and 70s, those that came from the Caribbean in the 60s and 70s, were not leaving forever. It was clear in their mind. Their plan was to either get their personal things in order in a way that they could go back home and help, or for the case of Haiti, where things were kind of troublesome, it was at least until a time that things would be more favorable, and in the hope that from another place that is more stable, they could at least help stabilize. Now we are their children, most of us, and we have children. We are the second and third generation. And you cannot circumvent scriptures. The time is now. We're feeling it. And it's important for us to understand that the scriptures tells you what to do. They don't go into details on how to do it. And that is why men are brought and raised at the right time to guide us through these things. And we are blessed and highly favored to have a man such as the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. The Honorable Elijah Muhammad said in his lecture series, The Theology of Time, speaking about the importance of getting together, speaking about raising a people. What does it mean on a day-to-day? What are the steps? He had the plan. He has the plan. And he was talking to professionals. And he says, quote, we can't build, help me make a nation that is unsurpassed by any nation on the earth. That's what we have to do now, since the enemy of ours make us, and this is spoken in 1972 to Black America, but see how it applies to the Black man and woman, Caribbean people, African people in Canada today. That's what we have to do, since the enemy of ours makes us unwanted and unrecognized by all societies of the earth's people. We got to regain our place in society, and you're capable of doing it. If I can give you a sample, why can't you and I make the goods? Don't that the enemy will not recognize you. He will respect you if he respects me. What God has taught me, you and I can force him to respect us, because we have knowledge, better knowledge of cleanliness, better knowledge of what we need in the field of mathematics, and a better knowledge of the pen. You are the best in all of that. Let us get together, brothers and sisters, and let the world know that we are capable of demanding respect. We shouldn't wait for them to respect us on their initial step. We'll do that ourselves. We will force them to do it. And so his plea to the professional, to those who know, is a plea for us to gather around his wisdom with knowledge that we've received through learning in his word. We are blessed to have such brothers. And today we are blessed to hear from such a brother that the messenger was yearning for, these professionals, these highly learned people that could, joining their high learning with the teachings of the messenger and the wisdom of the messenger, open up a whole world for us, not to do what we see, but to do what is unseen. And we are blessed and highly favored to have among us one of such brother, a man that I am humbly very grateful to be able to call my friend. He has toured the world. He has been speaking to government officials. He's also highly respected in the street, in the worst parts of Trinidad. He can walk with his head up any time of day. Yet he can also walk in a parliament. He can walk in Mecca. He's walked in all fields in humility and walked out with great recognition all the time. It is my great pleasure to encourage you to open your mind and your ears to hear the words of our dear brother, Dr. David Muhammad out of Trinidad.
Much, my beloved brother, Michael Muhammad. It's great to see you and to hear your voice again, and greetings to all the viewers and listeners, to our beloved hosts. We want to particularly thank you for your interest in Haiti and its relevance to the rest of the Caribbean. So I begin in the name of Allah, the Beneficent, the Merciful. I bear witness that there is but one God. We thank Almighty God, Allah, for giving to us today a divine leader, teacher, and guide, the leader of the Nation of Islam, the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, who was raised up by the man whom Allah God chose to reintroduce us to that particular element of our African heritage, which was the religion of Islam. Allah says in the Quran, in the last verse that was revealed, Surah 5, verse 3, that on this day has he completed his favor on us and given to us Islam as a religion. And this new lifestyle that was reintroduced to us has been a blessing that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad has been able to raise up so many. So in the great names of all of the worthy servants of Almighty God Allah, I'd like to greet you, beloved brothers and sisters, beloved family, the greeting words of peace in the Arabic language of Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam, sir.
Salam, sir.
Walaikum salam, sir.
Yes, and I am, of course, willing and open to at any point respond to any questions that there may be. But I would lay a foundation in, first of all, pointing out that the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan had said to us that we all owe a debt of gratitude to Haiti, because Haiti has demonstrated to us how we can elevate our status and establish our nationhood and sovereignty by refusing to tolerate the injustice and oppression that has become second nature to us accepting, and take the liberation and independence that we normally dream, write, and sing about. The Haitian Revolution stands as an example to all lovers of freedom everywhere who have ever confronted systemized oppression, that at every moment along the way in the struggle, the power is contained within our own palms. However, the degree and the intensity within which we may be able to demonstrate that power is based on our state of consensus at that very moment. So our unity and solidarity is like a barometer that measures the potential output and impact of our collective strengths, manifesting itself as Black power. So if among us our state of organic solidarity and mechanical solidarity is high, then our potential at that very moment would be at its greatest. However, if we are in a state of disunity, division, and disagreement, then our potential at that particular moment would be at its weakest. This is why Allah says in the Quran that when we are about to confront the enemy in battle, we must settle our differences first, and then afterwards come together as a compact, solid wall. Because if we move forward to confront an enemy without settling our differences, then those differences may be made manifest out there on the battlefield, and the enemy may be able to take advantage of them. This has been a universal weakness among us. And when you look at the general history of Haiti, you see that more so in Haiti than maybe anywhere else, and I cannot think of anywhere else on planet Earth, where this was such a scientific project. Because Haiti actually, under its constitution under the French, had laws pertaining to the rights of the mulattoes or mixed race persons, which was above the blacks, but below the whites. In most other countries, there was what was called in the sociology a pigmentocracy that was determined by a methodological practice of colorism, where there was skin color discrimination and preferences that were boosted as a result of the bombarding of images in the minds of the masses through media, through religion, and through mischaracterization of undesirable individuals. So there has always been this skin color discrimination. However, at the same time, there has been an unwritten law on how that unfolds. But in Haiti, you had constitutionally laws that placed the mulatto above the dark-skinned Africans, when in truth and in fact, both were brothers of equal status in terms of brotherhood. But a social science experiment was placed whereby the blacks are under the oppression of the whites. But you put the mulattoes in the middle and redirect the focus on the part of the black majority on the mulattoes instead of onto the whites, so we end up fighting our own brothers. So when you go right back to the early days of the three magnificent generals, Toussaint Louverture, Jean-Jacques Dessalines, and Henry Christophe, it was written in the law of Haiti, which was established as a republic on January the 1st, 1804, that any black person who was a slave or enslaved in any other part of the world, once you make it to Haiti and you arrive on the shores, you are automatically free and you're automatically a citizen of Haiti. Now, based on that model, all of us are supposed to have dual citizenship between Africa and the Caribbean. But that very idea comes across as being contentious, subversive, and revolutionary. When the truth and the fact is the same kind of model that the Jews use, because all of the Jews in America have dual citizenship between the United States and Israel. But that idea is seen more as a bond of kinship between those who share the same ancestry and have engaged in the process to reconnect that sense of family. But with us, it seems to be more of a hostile approach to dealing with social inequality. And it's a shame that we look at our own unity like that. Recently, on September the 7th, 2021, for the first time ever in all of human history, there was the first Africa CARICOM Heads of Government Summit, where for the first time ever, heads of governments of African countries met in conference with, virtually, heads of governments of Caribbean countries to discuss ways of bringing Africa and the Caribbean closer together. And it's so funny that, of course, many great things were discussed, including direct flights from at least one country in Africa to at least one country in the Caribbean, the removal of visa restrictions from African countries and Caribbean countries, vice versa with each other, the encouragement of promoting the kinship connections historically between Africa and the Caribbean. That's what the conversation was based around. But imagine that while those conversations are taking place, and we 100% support the Africa CARICOM Summit, it's actually our intention to have a grassroots Africa CARICOM Summit next year. But while they're discussing that, you have so many Africans from Africa, in particular Ghana and Nigeria, who are being held in detention centers, who have not committed any crime except allegedly overstaying time. That is not a crime. But they're locked away. Now, none of the heads of government discussed that. And how could we talk about a summit when many of the Caribbean countries still have clauses in their CARICOM agreements that restrict the access of Haitian citizens into other Caribbean countries? That is sick. When the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan traveled through the Caribbean in 2012, the sister, beautiful, beloved sister who prepares his meals, who's in charge of his kitchen, Sister Mary Alice, was denied entry into Trinidad. She's an American resident, lived in America for however many decades. But here, Americans can come into a Caribbean country, but fellow CARICOM citizens cannot come into the same country. I was really impressed and fascinated by the speaking of French that I heard at the beginning of this program. And it just so happens that right now in Trinidad, we have 3 guests from the Ivory Coast, 2 of whom are Muslims. But of those 3 guests from the Ivory Coast, 2 of them are dual citizens with the United States. They came straight into the country. The 3rd one, who's traveling on an Ivory Coast passport, had to get a visa to land here, and we had to jump through some hoops and go around some bends to get that dealt with. And that should not be. So all of these are foundations for many of our concerns. And again, as the minister said, we owe a debt of gratitude to Haiti. And so with the recent unrest that has been taking place, I mean, there are so many different angles of this, but I want to point out that there are 2 main ways that our enemies ensure their domination and control and oppression of us, within the political arena, that is. One is to pit us against each other. So the nature of the political system is that it must be adversarial and obstructionist. In other words, if you are an opposition leader within the system that we've inherited, and the government, let's say hypothetically, although there aren't much cases of this, but let's say hypothetically that the government is doing a good job. Let's say the government in some particular country anyway is doing an excellent job. Based on the definition of your job description as an opposition leader, even if the government is doing the best job, unless you are opposing them, challenging them, literally trying to destroy them, get them out of office, obstruct the progress that they're making, unless you're doing that, you're not doing a good job in your role. Imagine that. That in order for you to be classified as doing a great job as a leader of the opposition, you have to stop progress if the government is making progress. Now, we are locked in a system where no matter how good things are, no matter how stable the society becomes, no matter how much progress and productivity is taking place within the land, no matter how vibrant the economy may be, or how much business is booming, the political system is set to destroy itself. It is as if there is a self-destruction time bomb ticking away on it that lasts for these 5-year periods in between the elections, where you focus more on replacing someone in office or getting into office rather than serving the people in office. And that is like a Caribbean curse. That is why so many of these nations have this revolving door of leadership. You have one government in office, and then the people become disenchanted with them and vote them out. And then the ones that they vote out have turned out to be an even worse nightmare. Or the ones that come in end up being even more terrible than the ones that went out. And then it's just a revolving door because no one is voting for the greater of two goods. Everyone is voting for the lesser of two evils. So one, our enemies are able to control us within the system by having an adversarial type of political structure. You must oppose, you must obstruct, you must try to pull back, you must be an enemy of progress if the government is making progress. And secondly, is to link the leadership within the political circles to the interests of the elites. Kwame Ture, in his book Black Power, said that Black power is not Black visibility, or Black visibility is not Black power. Think about this for a moment. Kwame Ture's book was entitled Black Power, and chapter 2 in the book was entitled Black Power. Chapter 2? What about chapter 1? If the book is called Black Power, and chapter 2 is entitled Black Power, we have to ask ourselves, well, what could chapter 1 be entitled? What theme or concept could be so important that it could occupy the primary position in the publication of that literature? And the answer is, in the book Black Power, chapter 1 is entitled White Power. And in the book Black Power, in chapter 1 entitled White Power, Kwame Ture says in the Black community, there can be no white power unless you have Black elected officials who seek white interests. Now, that has been the whole modus operandi of the system under which we labor. And sometimes you have to double check those who are demonized by our enemies. Give you one little example, Papa Doc. Duvalier, Francois Duvalier, the father, and baby Doc, Jean-Claude Duvalier. Okay, so what are the things that we hear about both of them, in particular the father? We hear words like dictator, of course, tyrant, murderer, warlord. You hear about the Tonton Macoute, gang, killing rivals. All right, but what can you say about Donald Trump or George Bush or Bill Clinton for that matter? Okay, so we understand that. Those things we cannot defend. But Papa Doc Duvalier started off as a Black conscious man. He was a doctor, a medical doctor, who worked during the war treating Black soldiers. And he had a philosophy that evolved from what was called negritude, a Afro-French based philosophy of Black consciousness. And Papa Doc was mindful of the dismantling of the policies and principles that were established by the Haitian Revolution. For example, the Haitian Constitution said white people cannot own land in Haiti. And there was a massacre of approximately 5,000 white people in Haiti after the Haitian Revolution. And even though white people would have killed over time collectively close to 500,000 Blacks, we still feel more of a sense of a chill and that something's wrong when we hear about 5,000 whites being killed. You can hear about 5 million Africans being killed. It doesn't seem to touch the nerve at all, but you hear about 5,000 whites. Why did they do that? What was wrong? Did they hold anyone responsible? Was anyone arrested? It's like we can't even to this day deal with that. It's like when those terrorists in France at the Charlie Hebdo magazine killed those 12 people. Think about this. 12 white people in France killed by terrorists. This attracted 40 world leaders, presidents and prime ministers, heads of state from all around the world. Meanwhile, while that news was being reported of 12 white people being killed in France by terrorists, and 40 world leaders, including Barack Obama, flew over to France to march in solidarity against terrorism. While we're looking at that on the news, there was the ticker tape message running across the bottom of the screen that 2,000 Africans in Nigeria were killed by Boko Haram. How do you reconcile that? 40 of the world's most powerful men coming together for the death of 12 white people in France, but at the same time, 2,000 Africans in Nigeria killed, same kind of terrorism. And we, Black people, we put in the French flag watermark on the backdrop of our Facebook and Instagram and WhatsApp profile, where I stand in solidarity with France, light a candle for France, say a prayer for France, remember France, but you are African and wouldn't remember for barely a minute 2,000 African lives lost for as long as we start talking about France again. All of that is a mental sickness. So one of the interesting things about Haiti was that both the president and the opposition leader had the same surname, Moïse. So the president was Jovenel Moïse, and the opposition leader was Jean-Charles Moïse. And the diplomatic representatives of either side requested discussions between the two, and they refuse. No, I refuse to speak to you. You have to step down. No, I'm not even going to have dialogue with you. No, we're not going to talk. They're brothers, flesh of each other's flesh, blood of each other's blood, and bone of each other's bone. Same surname. What are the odds that maybe they're related? President and opposition leader, and they still couldn't meet at each other's throats. And last thing I want to point out to you as we open up is we would have heard in the assassination of President Jovenel Moïse that there was this outside interference. But you had persons, non-Haitians, foreigners, highly paid operatives, mischief makers, those working for the CIA to create destabilization and bring about division. You had them working very hard in Haiti. And I want to just make reference to a Port-au-Prince newspaper, Le Noveliste, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, dated February 18th, 2019, and reported that a Haitian citizen and 7 non-Haitians were arrested in the city during protests. Now, of course, the gas shortage has been linked to Venezuela cutting off sales to Haiti. All right, but what about CARICOM? So you talk about the protests. They were calling for Moise's resignation, calling for him to step down. All right, we all have these kinds of internal issues, but how did foreigners end up in that? Says at the time of their arrest, these individuals, 7 non-Haitians and 1 Haitian, they were carrying rifles, pistols, drones, and satellite phones in their vehicle, which did not have any license plates. Haitian Foreign Minister Bocci Edmond confirmed that among them were 5 Americans. What are Americans doing? Forget about the assassination, where there were Americans and Colombians, ex-special forces, highly militarily trained. We haven't even gotten to there as yet. But this is the protest leading up to the call for the removals of President Moïse. What are Americans doing protesting about conditions in Haiti? According to the editor of the newspaper, Le Noveliste, the group included 2 former Navy SEALs, a former Blackwater employee, and 2 Serbian mercenaries living in the United States. This is in the newspaper Haiti Liberty. Hope I'm saying that right. They were tasked with protecting the former head of the National Lottery, who intended to transfer $80 million from a Petro-Caribe bank account controlled jointly by the president, the prime minister, and the president of the central bank to a bank account solely controlled allegedly by President Moïse. And all of this outside interference, we have to read Confessions of an Economic Hitman, which largely spell out how infiltrators can get close to you, begin to influence you. Sometimes being given some really dastardly assignments, as we would have seen in the recent movie Judas and the Black Messiah, and how it is done. So this individual who was asked to infiltrate the Black Panthers, become close friends with Fred Hampton, who was the leader of the Black Panthers in Chicago. And then they give you some assignment to contribute towards his demise. Look at it. This man was stealing cars. And the FBI, they're watching him. He's stealing these cars. And instead of protecting the property of the owners, they're watching him. Then they're watching him some more. Then they're watching him some more. Then they build up enough of a case. Then they arrest him and say, look, we have evidence of you stealing this car, breaking into this house, stealing that property. You are facing a lifetime in prison. But we can lessen your sentence for you. Or maybe even you won't have to go to jail at all. And then he's thinking, well, what do I have to do? And say, join the Black Panthers. Become friends with Fred Hampton. And then we'll take it from there. Report to us what's going on, what his plans are, what he's speaking about, what his private objectives are, what his next move is. And that man turned out to be the individual who told the police exactly where Fred Hampton was when he was assassinated in his bed by the Chicago police. Just like Malcolm X, when Malcolm X was assassinated on February 25th, 1965 at the Audubon Ballroom in Manhattan, New York, the man who was giving him mouth-to-mouth resuscitation on the ground after he was shot, Gene Roberts, was an informant of the FBI. And when Malcolm X was dead and his mission was over, Gene Roberts went and joined the Black Panthers to carry out the same kind of work. So this is their modus operandi. This is their norm. It's divide and rule, divide and conquer. But in Haiti, in particular, the way that they used the mulattoes against the Blacks was a permanent kind of divide and rule arrangement. And so, of course, Henry Christophe was the first president of the Republic of Haiti. But after him, you had Alexandre Pétion of Pétion, who was a quote-unquote mulatto general. He was actually what they called a quadroon. And then now he is talking, they actually had a mulatto army. Think about that. White people in one militia, Black people in another militia, but mixed people in another one. And so there have been a lot of spillover from many of these times. And now with the so-called gas crisis, and the unrest in Haiti, the kidnappings, the so-called gangs, most of the time when you look at the root of their reactions to what's happening in society, the idea and intention is not necessarily a bad one, but it's just that the methodology sometimes needs guidance. And as it stands now, I am of the view, as I close, that CARICOM must step in as the healers in this, because we cannot expect to get peace. We cannot expect to resolve our problems if we perpetually consult the same sources that were responsible for creating the problems in the first place. So I pray that something that I said would shed some light on the situation in general, and also that it would have hopefully stimulated some thoughts for additional discussion or questions. And I leave it here and I turn it over to our host as I greet you in peace. Thanking you. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam, sir. All praises due to Allah. What a wonderful wonderful, profound, and scholarly expose you just gave us, dear brother, student minister, Dr. David Muhammad. So let's give him a virtual round of applause. Really thankful. And you can put it in the chat. Vous pouvez mettre dans le chat des plus un ou des emojis pour démontrer notre appréciation. So you said so much, brother minister. We thankfully recorded it so we can digest it. As we close, we have brothers and sisters, many of them really from Haiti. So we want to open up the floor. If there are some questions that you would like to ask student minister Dr. David Muhammad, at this time, please feel free to do so and don't be shy. I'm going to monitor. You can put them in the chat or you can simply raise your hand. Donc, si vous avez des questions en ce moment pour notre frère David Muhammad, ne soyez pas timide. Notre frère est en direct de la Trinidad en ce moment, donc nous sommes très reconnaissants qu'il ait pu prendre le temps de se libérer. So I see the special assistant's hand up. So Brother Mikael, go ahead, my brother.
Yes, sir. Assalamu alaikum, brother.
Wa alaikum salam.
With your sociological background, and I've had this on my mind, and I've probably annoyed a lot of people over the years in Montreal with that. But I've always thought that how Israel went about to recolonize, and I mean, we're skipping the part that they actually stole the land, but how they went about to build Israel in that every Jew in the diaspora was basically asked to contribute, be it either going physically, settling, and in that case, there were organizations in those countries preparing and organizing people to mass move. The second was contribution that I was asked was at least spend some time, especially if you have a particular skill. You can go spend your vacations or 6 months or whatnot, or send your children during their summer vacation, or the least, last but not least, was to at least give money. I always felt that as a model, it could be used for us to, we're not starting in a land that is empty. And this is where my question is that we already have people, and you have personal experience in settling back individually. But could that be a model for us, for the Caribbeans, especially for Haiti, that needs so much reconstruction, using that Jewish model as a base to go back home, as opposed to just going individually one by one? Thank you.
You're on mute, brother minister.
Yeah, my apologies. That is such an important part of the mission, because the irony of this is that the same way that we should be going about this repatriation project, others are using similar procedures to encroach on our spaces. I have to salute my brother in the United Kingdom, Brother Abdul Hakim Muhammad, who has established something called the Repatriation Club, where every week they've been looking at a different Caribbean nation and they're bringing together financially successful Black people in England and are choosing different Caribbean countries to move back to. So the Jews started this by purchasing land in Palestine. And the way that it was done, I mean, England had what was called the Balfour Declaration. So the World Health Organization in 1897 agreed on Palestine as the homeland. Then 20 years later, you had the Balfour Declaration, where the English government basically endorsed the move. But during that entire period, all the way up to 1947, when the United Nations officially recognized Israel as a separate state, you had wealthy Jewish people from the West buying up land in Palestine, then becoming landlords, then becoming business entrepreneurs, then going up there, establishing gated communities, then bringing their families in, networking with them based on industry, trade, and commerce with the United States and Israel, and assisting each other on both sides of the Atlantic to prosper financially. It's like a science. Meanwhile, the Palestinians there, before Israel was established as a state, find themselves shopping in stores owned by the Jews, patronizing businesses owned by the Jews, and even paying rent for the houses that they were living in to Jews. So after they established themselves on that grassroots level, the next step was the United Nations, and we saw what happened there. This is very similar to what happened with Haiti and the Germans. Now, I already spoke about the Haitian constitution making it illegal for white people to own land. It was in 1825 that an arrangement was established where the Haitians had to pay reparations to the French for the loss of the French property in Haiti. And the property that the French lost in Haiti included the Haitian people themselves. That should have never, ever been acknowledged. It should have never, ever been agreed to. We'll pay you back for your vehicles and machinery and equipment, maybe even some houses, but you want us to pay you back for us that belonged to you at one time? So they established the reparations from 1825. So Haiti had to pay millions of francs to France. But while that was going on, there was a secret, silent, quiet encroachment on land ownership by Germans coming over and purchasing land in Haiti bit by bit. So even though it was illegal, loopholes were opened up after the resumption of the payments of reparations, and the Germans slowly but surely became wealthy Haitians de facto. And then when 1915 came, the United States of America officially occupied Haiti for 19 years, from 1915 to 1934. And during that period, they regularized European land ownership in Haiti. Think. And then in 1934, to announce the end of the occupation period, it was almost like a new occupation period because Franklin Delano Roosevelt, President of the United States, was the first ever head of a foreign country to set foot on Haitian soil as a visitor. And here Roosevelt, and that 19-year occupation of the Americans over Haiti, established a kind of hidden European dominance that went back to the slave registry type of apportioning of human worth and value to individuals by skin color complexion. So you were half black, half white, you were a mulatto. You're 3/4 white, 1/4 black, you were a quadroon. You're 7/8 white, 1/8 black, you're a quadroon, octroon. Then on the other end, you had Mepsi, Courtesy, Mongrel, Cabaret, and Sambo, Sambo being the blackest. And by law, you had different rights and privileges assigned to you based on your skin color. And so even though the Haitian Constitution aborted all of that, you had a slow but steady evolution of a new status quo that was congruent with skin color complexion, that the Germans started silently and that the Americans fortified and enforced. And it was experiences like that that gave birth to people like Francois Duvalier. So Francois Duvalier comes out with his negritude, his French Black consciousness philosophy, and they pick out everything negative about the man and make that his autobiography. So sad thing about it as well is some Caribbean countries, as I would have said earlier, and I know Bahamas is one of them, because of course Bahamas is in close geographical proximity to Haiti. But they have clauses restricting Haitians from entering their country. Now, how are we going to do business and trade if we cannot even visit each other like that? And those are institutionalized impediments against our progress. And so I hope that the Africa CARICOM Summit can address the Haiti issue. I hope the Africa CARICOM Summit would take note of the fact that the population of Haiti is larger than the entire remaining population of the 14 other CARICOM countries. The population of Haiti is almost 3 times, no, it's twice, at least twice, the entire population. Jamaica barely has now 3 million people, Trinidad and Tobago, 1.5 million people. And those are the only Caribbean countries, English-speaking Caribbean countries, that have crossed 1 million. After that, Guyana is approaching 1 million, but most of the other islands have less than 200,000. Haiti is going to have 10 million soon. 10 million. Meanwhile, all of the other members of CARICOM all put together barely make up 5 million or 6 million by now, maybe. So how could you ignore that? How could you not take note of that? And I really hope that the issue of not just visiting, vacationing, and going for tourism purposes can be considered by CARICOM, but I hope that there be, and it's also in the hands of the Haitians as well, because there are some Caribbean countries, Antigua is one, where they're offering you these deals to come and be a citizen. Imagine that. You do a certain amount of business with the country or invest a certain amount of money in the country, and they literally hand you a passport. And why are they handing a white person from Canada, the United States, or Europe a passport for citizenship? We have next door neighbors who can't even visit. So yes, that is something that we must look at collectively. And Haiti, I don't know if we're aware, but Haiti was the first ever country in the world also for the United States of America to place sanctions on. Think how many countries there have been sanctions on: Iran, Iraq, Venezuela, South Africa. Haiti was the only other country, first country that America ever placed sanctions on. And this was at a time when there were only 2 republics in the Western Hemisphere. One was the United States of America. The other was Haiti. That history within itself tells a story.
Wow. That information was mind-blowing. All praises are due to Allah. Thank you so much. I mean, when we think about, all that you've said, and thinking on the repatriation club. I'm looking at some of the brothers, brother Gino, brother Daniel, brother Sabir. We gotta start a repatriation club out here in Montreal. Sister Reva, come on now. We've got to make that happen. All praises are due to Allah. That's a great model. And definitely, you know, we had student minister Yusuf Makardal last 2 months, and we are having you this month. And with everything that you're dropping, all this information, A, we need to translate it in French for those who don't understand, and B, we need to bring you back. We need to bring you back. Get in the chat if you want Minister David to come back, because most definitely there's so much to be said about the state of the Caribbean and to isolate that. We have a question. Nous avons une question. Céline, je crois que tu avais une question.
Oui, salam alaikum.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam.
Yes, I love your presentation. Okay, and it inspires me. I'm white, or my skin is white, but I found out that one of the things, and there's two things I want to mention, and a third one about Israel. Number one, the white governments or the KKK governments have put down women, European women, be it French or English. We do have absolutely no heroes. Unlike Haiti has really taught me a lot about heroes in Africa. Women win, but not in Europe. What do we have? Saints that go around killing Muslims, like Isabella of Castile. Then she went out to kill out Jews and Muslims, and then on top of that, she kills out the Taínos, and she doesn't care. But she's a saint. That's a role model I can have? No. So my idea, and if it's okay with you guys, is to organize women, at least those of European background, to stand up and try to defeat the current government. They don't even know what is wrong. They really are ignorant. And believe me, I know, okay? My other comment is about Israel. The problem with Israel, and one of the biggest problems, is that as of the Ottoman Empire, a lot of Jews that came from Morocco, from Egypt, and whatever else, they did buy land in Israel, totally legal and whatever, under the Ottoman Empire. Once they got defeated by England, and especially Churchill, he did the worst. What they did is that they went into the bank accounts in Switzerland, like they had opened up all the bank accounts of Jews that had the money that was put in under Nazis. They did that too, and they stole their money. That's how the Queen got a $35 billion carriage. And on top of that, they lied. So a lot of the land, it was bought by a lot of other people. And now the danger is that the people that came in to, let's say, north of Africa because of 1492 and the loss of Andalusia and whatever else, they're forgetting that part of history. They're saying, oh, we're victims. And that, what do you think? Do you think it's a good idea? Because they treat you, and I'll just take one verse of the Quran. They said that in Islam, a woman's voice is less than that of a man. And she's treated, you need 4 women to testify or whatever. But in Europe, they took that, and women have no rights, nor does anybody else. So they're really using the Quran in a very bad way and influencing. So that's all. And I'm doing the Bible too. So let's have some fun. Expose their lies.
Thank you, Celine, for your question.
Yeah, let me just say though, the Quran does not say that women are of lesser worth or value than men. That's definitely not so at all. There are passages in the Quran that may be interpreted as having that implication. in the same way that there are other verses in the Quran that may be interpreted as women of being of greater value than men. So the Quran definitely doesn't give that message at all. And when it comes to the Hadith have even more content suggesting that the woman is favored by Allah over the men, right? And there are multiple passages in the Quran and Hadith that I can state to verify that. If anyone would like, and later on we could probably explore that. But I just wanted to set the record straight on that. But outside of that, literature in general has been subject to male hegemonic ideology. And when it comes to the so-called classics in literature, and even in many academic disciplines, many of the early writers and main references are men. This had nothing to do, as we know, with the lesser ability of women, but it had to do with the dominance of men. And that is something that is fastly fading. And this is why it's very important for us to highlight in our teaching of Black history, the great Black woman, the 5 great queens, Queen Nefertiti, Queen Nefertari, Queen of Sheba, Makeda, Queen Hatshepsut, and so many others, the pioneers within the Black struggle, Sister Winnie Mandela, Rosa Parks, Ida B. Wells, Madam C.J. Walker, Harriet Tubman, who's about to be on the $20 bill. We are proud to say that in our own organization, the Nation of Islam, we are the first known Muslim community in the world to have a woman as the head of a community, who was Sister Ava Muhammad when she was the regional minister at Mosque number 15 in Atlanta. And there are so many factors that we should take great pride in embellishing about the woman, the Black woman in particular, and the struggle that she's fought. Sisters like Angela Davis, Hazel Scott, and those who've achieved and accomplished in other fields of human endeavor. So yeah, definitely that is something that we should all be sensitive to.
Yes, sir. All praises are due to Allah. Wonderful answer. Very, very precise and concise. All right. So I did see the hand. We might take 1 or 2 more questions. And by the way, Student Minister David, we've got lots of great comments in the chat. You know, you've got people fired up. So all praises due to Allah. So we have a great brother with a question, who is going to be also in our next panel discussion, our open, diverse panel discussion. One great militant brother fighting hard for the cause of Haiti. And so he has a question now. Frère Franz André, la parole est à toi, frère.
Okay, good afternoon, bon après-midi à tous. Mr. Mohammed, now speaking to you, and thank you for your interventions. My question is, because there's a couple things to tell you that bothers me. When we say about the reparation tax that we had to suffer, should have never be paid, what were the choices at the time? We need to remember that we are threatened by the German, France, Spain, Portugal, Netherlands, Germany. It's either we pay or we be invaded once again. So I'm not sure that was something that shouldn't be done. It's what happened after. I think it was a way to buy time and find ways to really build what had to become a free nation, which we never were. And we're still pursuing to get our independence from the imperialistic and neo-colonialistic countries. One other thing that also I'm questioning is about the CARICOM interventions. We need to remember that Jovenel Moïse was actually the president of the CARICOM in 2018, and we've seen what his father, his political, spiritual father, Michel Martelly, has done with the CARICOM money, with the Petro-Caribbean money.
He was the chairman. Yeah.
Yeah, with the Petro-Caribbean money. And I think 3 times while he was president of the CARICOM, Jovenel Moïse actually, I've said that, he trahi, Venezuela, where he actually denounced the Venezuelan. And
He
what,
betrayed.
pardon me?
Le mot que je cherchais, c'est betrayed.
We
Something
betrayed,
betrayed.
yeah, that's right. He's betrayed the Venezuela 3 times while he was president. And I didn't see the CARICOM reacting. So is the CARICOM will become or will be part of the solution? I'm not sure. Yeah, there were some other countries involved in the CARICOM that actually reacted, but as a group, the CARICOM didn't condemn Jovenel Moïse for what he's done. And we've been witnessing crimes over and over while he was president, and before that, Michel Martelly, and before that, other presidents. The only president that seems to have some kind of credibility in the past is the case of Jean-Bertrand Aristide, but even there, even him is being questioned. And it's always a question making the better choice for a country, making the better choice for population. There's a perception that Jean-Bertrand Aristide was doing the proper choices. He's the only president that's actually asked the reparation money was to be reimbursed. And look at what happened to him. There was a coup plotted here in Montreal, in Canada, by Denis Coderre, who was our mayor for a time, Denis Paradis. That plot was including only 3 countries, the French, France, United States, and Canada. There were no issues part of that meeting. And a year after, it happened in 2003. And a year after, they had a coup against Aristide and sent him to Central Africa. And from that day in 2004, that's when the MINUSTA, which is the Onusian army, came in place. And since then, we have the core group. So it's extremely complicated. And that's when I hear we have to do with rapatriement, we have to repatriate our people. In that current situation, it's impossible. We in the diaspora are being seen as the piggy bank. We are money providing. We actually Haiti as a business of having people leaving the country so they can send money in. So it's extremely complicated. So I was hoping to hear a little bit more about how the unity of the Caribbean can be done, withstanding the CARICOM. I don't believe CARICOM is part of the solution at this point. I feel at this point the CARICOM is still under the control of the United States and other countries that actually have a hand on the Caribbeans. So those are questions more than answers, but I just want to have your opinion on that.
Merci, Frère France, pour ta question. Merci, Frère France. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, thank you very much for that question. And even more so, thank you for the opportunity to set the record straight with my references to CARICOM. I can assure you, and my brother, Michael Mohammed in St. Vincent would testify to this on my behalf, that when I speak about the greatness of CARICOM, the power and potential of CARICOM, the magnificence of CARICOM, and CARICOM as a problem-solving entity that can intervene on different levels in the progressive movements outside its territories. I am not speaking about the governments. No. If
Go ahead.
someone makes a statement like, America is a great nation, you're not talking about Joe Biden.
That's right.
You talk about England is a fantastic country. You're not talking about Boris Johnson. We cannot underestimate what CARICOM represents. CARICOM is the 6th region of Africa. CARICOM is the essence of the African diaspora in general. CARICOM is that only region of the world outside of Africa itself where people of African descent have trajectories into true pathways of power, controlling congresses, parliaments, senates, and judiciaries. CARICOM is that only part of the world outside of Africa where Black people are all of the majority officials in law enforcement. Now, when you look at that, it's not the governments. In fact, I'm saying simultaneously that it is the same people on the grassroots level that are challenging these governments, holding these governments accountable. And I would remind you that I would have said maybe about 20 to 30 minutes ago, in reference to the Africa CARICOM Summit that took place on September the 7th, 2021, that it is our intention to host a grassroots Africa CARICOM Summit so that on the grassroots ground organizational level, we can discuss many of those issues that those political representatives were way too coward to deal with. This is why I quoted Kwame Ture in Black Power in talking about white power, saying that there can be no white power unless you have officials representing white interests. That's what the heads of government in CARICOM are for the most part. So we are the ones, African people on the ground, grassroots level, in organizations and movements, associations, those who are lifting our voices against injustice, those who are calling for the end of oppression, the ceasing of tyranny, the end of exploitation. Those of us in movements like the Nation of Islam, who would link and connect with other like-minded people, whether it be the revolutionary Christians, our Rastafarian brothers and sisters, the Pan-Africanists, the Black nationalists, the Bobo Shanti, our cultural icons, performers, writers, entertainers, poets. That's who I'm talking about when we say CARICOM, and also those in government. Because as well, we cannot underestimate the fact that there are some individuals within government who would like to participate in the struggle for progress of our people. But many times, their degree of involvement in the struggle has a lot to do with how much pressure we put on them to get involved in it. I could give you a classic example. And that's just yesterday, I was able to contact the Minister of National Security in this country, and he did a great favor for us in getting one of our African businessmen to get a visa waiver from the Ivory Coast. He's coming in here to discuss business with the only Black-owned energy company in Trinidad. So yes, they can be of help, they can be of assistance, but when we're talking about CARICOM, we're talking about the grassroots level of our people. So I agree with you also, dear brother, that if we were to look at CARICOM exclusively as the political representatives of the government that are elected into those offices, they will definitely be insufficient because many of them do promote white interests. But we have to put pressure on them and also demonstrate our self-sufficiency. The Black community in the Caribbean, as we're taught by the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan, have to conduct our operations in such a way that it should not make any difference to us who is in government and who's out of government. And last thing I'll say on that, one of our guests from the Ivory Coast, remember, he's an official in the energy industry. We are working with the only Black-owned energy company in the country. And here he is, coming from the Ivory Coast, telling us, we need to, in Trinidad, grow food. Imagine that, this man in the energy business, oil and gas, saying, you know what, in Trinidad, Black people need to grow food. Because he said, when you're involved in the energy industry, you barely get 10% of the profits that are generated from the transactions. He said, but with agriculture, 100% is yours. And even if you don't sell the product, you can benefit from the consumption of it. There was an old saying among the drug dealers, don't get high on your own supply. But this is exactly the supply that we should be using if we're growing food. And food as medicine, how to eat to live, which was our topic today at our Sunday meeting, Nation of Islam Sunday meeting in Trinidad. So the power is in our hands. We don't expect the government to grow food for us. We in Trinidad acquired 6,000, we acquired 3/4 of an acre of land from the state, and with no government help, no government support, we built an education center, 6,000 square feet. Now, no business, no major corporation, no government came and handed us a check. But we showed the government, you all could build schools with the national treasury that everyone pays taxes into. We could build schools also with Black unity. That's where the real strength of CARICOM is, brother. So thanks for raising that. But, you know, we're talking about grassroots power in CARICOM in addition to just the political power. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you. Thank you so much, Minister Dr. David. That was a beautiful answer. Very, very insightful indeed. And I, for one, am very excited to, learn more about the grassroots Afro-Caribbean Summit. That is definitely something we need to, the diaspora here in Canada, we have a lot of people from the Caribbean and Africa. So we need to get behind that at the grassroots. Yeah. I love what you said about agriculture, and one of our elders, Jean Durandis, artist and lawyer, who was invited on the Academy X platform from our brother, Gino X, who's on the line right now, one of the members of the nation in our city. And he talked about building this agricultural coalition in Haiti and across the Caribbean. So what you're saying, you're bearing witness through action that it is possible. So thank you, sir. Wonderful answer. We have one more question, because we got to let him go. We love to have him on. We got to let him go. We'll bring him back.
Yeah, I'll make myself available at any time. I give my word.
Oh, yes, sir. Praise be to Allah. So we have one more question from our brother, who was the first on the line. I came on, he was the first there, ready and willing. So, frère Jude, bien-aimé, la parole est à toi, mon frère.
Yes, well, thank you. Thank you for this event. What I wanted to add to Andrew's comment is that, well, not Andrew, actually, I think Brother Mohammed, David Mohammed, he was talking about Trinidad, how people actually reintegrate, bought land and everything else. The problem with Haiti is that there is a blockage, there's a situation where it's difficult to actually go and then invest and actually make sure that your investment will come to fruition, because you don't know, there's so much insecurity. There is actually a concerted effort to actually like destroy whatever actually somebody wants to go do there, and basically you can lose your life. And I have multiple examples of that. So that's a problem. It's not a Trinidad, actually, I don't think that they have that kind of issue, or other islands, but in Haiti, if a Haitian born actually goes there to actually try to establish, it's going to be under attack. It's not business as usual there. You have to see a lot of things and continue maintaining. It's a war zone, basically. You're going to war if you're going to do business in Haiti.
Yes, sir, brother. That's a real reality, right? Yeah. Go ahead, brother minister.
Yeah, two things I'd like to say in response to that. One, so right now there's a lot of focus and talk about gangs in Haiti, right? But two things. One, Haiti has a much lower murder rate than I believe most of the Caribbean, a much lower murder rate.
People don't know that. People don't know that.
Haiti has a much lower murder rate than Jamaica, Trinidad, St. Vincent, St. Kitts, St. Lucia, Barbados, In fact, the only country that might have a higher, that Haiti might have a higher murder rate than is possibly Grenada. I'm not sure about all these, but at least the first 6, definitely. Haiti, because I monitor all of these statistics. I've been monitoring these statistics for the last 20 years doing my PhD research. I don't think Haiti has ever, at least not within recent time, been in the top 10 for murders. And you normally have at least 3 or 4 Caribbean countries, and you have at least 9 Latin American and Caribbean countries, because basically you also have Honduras, Guatemala, El Salvador. They have the highest over a period of time, as well as Jamaica and Trinidad. So one, Haiti has a relatively low murder rate. Secondly, Haiti has, and again, I stand to be corrected, but I'm 95% sure, 95% sure that Haiti has in the Caribbean the lowest murder rate by firearms usage statistic. The last United Nations report that I saw, and I took note of Haiti, they said 36%. 36% of the homicides in Haiti are done with illegal firearms, whereas the average is around 70%. So those are issues that can be capitalized on. Low murder rate, low rate of circulation of arms and ammunition in proportion to the population in comparison to most of these other Caribbean islands, less than half the murder rate in many other Caribbean islands. That is something great. That is something that other Caribbean nations are aspiring towards. But for those who hear the hype and who are exposed to the propaganda would think that bodies are piling up in Haiti all the time. That is a perception. It is totally false. And it is, many times there's false or fake news out there and it gets corrected. With Haiti, it is perpetuated. Misinformation about Haiti is constantly recycled in the minds of even younger generations coming up, seeing the news for the first time and being influenced by it. So that is one. And the other thing that I want to point out, these barriers that you speak of, there's not much that I could say about that. But I can propose something that could possibly be a solution to that. Kwame Ture, when he left America, Stokely Carmichael, he took the first name of Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana and the surname of Secretary of Guinea, and took on the name Kwame Ture, and he formed an organization called the All African People's Revolutionary Party. And we emphasize saying not the some African People's Revolutionary Party, because the unity of all African people is the most profound and potent alliance possible, because we have among us the widest diversity of social class, the widest diversity of educational gaps, the widest gap in between the mass payment minimum wage and occupations and professions across the board. We have brothers and sisters from the same family. One might be a doctor or lawyer, the other's in prison for murder. And if we can create the kinds of linkages, you might have to read between the lines on some of this. But in Trinidad, we know quite a few people who've acquired property by getting an associate of theirs to be the front for the transaction. We need colleagues in different places, in different spaces with different kinds of faces, sometimes, to do some of these transactions that are necessary. So a solution to that would be to form alliances with our people, and even if necessary with other people, so that we can get some of those barriers removed. Sometimes you have a friend who might be listened to more so than you may be listened to, depending on who the audience is. And we make an alliance with them, strike an arrangement and get them to represent us. And okay, like for example, in Trinidad, I'll just use this as an example, and then I'll leave it there. But in Trinidad, like there are a lot of Black people who might want to buy property from Indians, and it's known that the Indians would not sell it to them, but they have an Indian friend who will go and conduct, or at least be the face of the transaction on their behalf. Common situation. Common situation. But you know, and the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan had always advocated it. When it comes to the gangs, that's our family. We have to make linkages and connections on the street, in the jail, in government, and with some of the government people who might end up in jail. We have to make those kinds of, we have to network, open skills banks and think tanks, come together, settle our differences, and unite. That is how we built our center in Trinidad. We could not have done it just by ourselves. We have to, and we had to network with our people. And I think that is probably the most underappreciated and taken for granted bits of potential that we have.
Wow, thank you so much, Brother Minister. Wow, that was heavy information, statistics and facts. Sometimes there's perceptions. Facts are important. And I remember I was in Jamaica, you know, when the minister was there and the whole Nation of Islam went to Jamaica, and I was in Kingston. And, you know, a lot of us, sometimes we think we know what gangster looks like. When you're in the heart of Kingston, we got to see what gangster looks like. I mean, you know, the murder rate and the kind of situations you see in the streets of Jamaica, it's unfathomable. But at the same time, like you said, and Minister David is not just talking, he is doing that work in the streets. He can walk with the gangs and they'll give him that respect. And we, even in Montreal, dans les rues de Montréal Nord, Saint-Michel, on a le respect des membres de gangs de rue. Souvent, c'est eux qui nous donnent le soutien parce que nous ne les jugeons pas. Et bien souvent, ces jeunes, eh bien, ils ont besoin d'être guidés et non pas méprisés. Et c'est le travail que nous faisons dans la nation d'Islam. And Minister David is doing that work in Trinidad, and we're trying to do it all over in all the inner cities to go after our people. So on that, thank you once again, Minister Dr. David.
Yes, sir.
Mohammed.
Can I just make one,
yes, sir. Go ahead.
Closing point, please? I want to say that I am part of a team that spans across the Caribbean. We have our brother, Minister Dennis Mohammed in Guyana, who's doing a magnificent job over there. Brother
Yes,
Dennis
sir.
Mohammed
Yes, sir. Allahu Akbar.
Yeah, put aside 2 boxes of Panadol and a vitamin C and a vitamin D for the Brother Dennis, right? We talk about that. I'll send it to you. Listen, Brother Dennis,
That's
Brother
right.
Dennis in Guyana is doing a magnificent job. He hosts an Honorable Elijah Muhammad week in Guyana, first week of October every single year. And it's not just one event or occasion. He goes into the schools, he goes into the prisons, goes onto the street, talks to our people at the meetings. And throughout the year, he's on the radio, he's on television. He is the essence of a true representative of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So in Guyana, we're well covered. In Barbados, our brother Abdul Rahman is the head of a community of very progressive believers in Barbados. They're into business, restaurants. Their businesses get such high ratings. Many of them have migrated from the United Kingdom, repatriating over there. And our minister, Brother Abdul Rahman in Barbados, was recently at the head of a major protest against the COVID-19 vaccines, raising the consciousness and awareness of our people. We have Brother Clive Muhammad in Jamaica. I mean, Jamaica is hard territory. Our brothers out there in Portmore, and he's holding together a strong circle of believers out there, working hard. He's on the street talking to the people. That's where the father of the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan is from. And Brother Clive Muhammad, who has to withstand so many forces, he stands strong and resilient. And in St. Vincent is our brother Mikhail Muhammad, special assistant here in the Eastern Caribbean. Brother Mikhail Muhammad, again, he's on the ground. So many people know Brother Mikhail in St. Vincent, and it seems like the same way that, you know, you live in a town or a city and everyone's house or building has a door with a lock and a key on it. It's as if there's no door that Brother Mikhail does not have the key to. He could walk straight into the office of the Prime Minister. He goes anywhere. The people know him. The people love him. He has St. Vincent covered. And one of the interesting things about Brother Mikhail is I went to the prison with him in St. Vincent, and the prison gates opened up and inmates came out. That's a longer story than it sounds like, but Brother Mikhail's influence in St. Vincent is growing. And our brother in Antigua as well, Brother Khalid Shabazz, he's a famous man in Antigua, because literally everyone on the streets in Antigua knows our brother Khalid Shabazz, and he represents the Honorable Minister Louis Farrakhan. So we're all a team from across the Caribbean, and we look forward to when we can travel back and forth to see each other again. But it's a privilege. It's a privilege. And of course, the Eastern Caribbean region of the Nation of Islam is a sub-region in the 7th region in Miami, under our brother Minister Patrick Muhammad, who also, of course, is of Haitian descent. And not only is he based in Miami as the 7th regional minister there, but Brother Patrick is in love with Haiti, so much so that his email address, his personal email address, is NOI for Haiti. So that tells you something, even though he's doing his work in America.
That's right.
You know, and then of course our brother Joseph McCandell is a representative who we feel so proud, so polished, so distinguished. You know, we feel so proud of our brother Joseph McCandell. And I did pull him in to do something with me in New York. I was invited to speak at the Medgar Evers College in Brooklyn. And I asked Brother McCandell to be one of the speakers there because he represents us so well. So I just want to make that point as well. It's a team of us. We all work together. We all stick together. We all stand up for one another. We all help each other in the best way that we could.
Thank you so much. Beautiful closing word, Minister Dr. David Mohammed. And on peut voir tout le travail. Ça, c'est un regard sur tout le travail que la Nation de l'Islam fait pour, justement, parce que certaines personnes vont dire parfois que la Nation de l'Islam, c'est seulement pour les États-Unis, that, yo, Nation of Islam, that's for Black people in America only. Well, you can see it today. You know, we are doing this work all over the Caribbean and trying to unite the diaspora and raise the Caribbean once again. So thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to bringing you back. And in fact, we have something where we want to plan having you and Brother Minister Makardal together to talk about Caribbean unity together. And we look forward to that. And we want to invite all the study groups from Ottawa and Toronto. We have a lot of Caribbean brothers and sisters in those cities as well. So we look forward to that. So on that, we're going to close out with just some quick announcements to say that you will be receiving, we are going to record, we have recorded this, so this we hope will be made available. We will soon be having a panel discussion with a mix of perspectives, because we have to be able to talk, amongst each other, and to have different perspectives from the Voodoo community to the Christian community to the Muslim community to the Black nationalist atheist community. But let's all dialogue so we can build. And we look forward to having you once again back to teach once again. And we also want to encourage everyone. Nous avons une mission justement en Haïti, dans les Caraïbes. Donc, nous vous invitons à soutenir ce travail. Entre autres, il y a nous avons, en fait, l'honorable ministre Louis Farrakhan avait investi dans un premier purificateur d'eau à l'époque, en 2012, lors du grand tremblement de terre. Il y a encore beaucoup de travail. Notre frère Youssef Makandal est sur cette mission. Et puis, nous avons un programme économique de 3 ans. Vous pouvez l'encourager. La Nation Islam est au service de toute la communauté noire. Nous avons plusieurs milliers d'acres de fermes où est-ce que nous faisons pousser nos propres légumes, nos propres élevages. Nous croyons que nous devons nous nourrir nous-mêmes et sortir notre bouche de la cuisine de notre ancien maître d'esclaves. Donc, il est important d'organiser ce plan économique de 3 ans. Et ici même à Montréal, nous avons notre frère, notre entrepreneur, frère Gerson X de gestion KMT. D'ailleurs, si vous avez besoin de conseils à propos de l'immobilier, de l'investissement et des finances, nous vous invitons à aller voir Gestion KMT et frère Gerson X. Nous voulons ici à Montréal également bâtir une infrastructure économique et nous avons les cerveaux pour le faire et encourager le service de streaming du Final Call, qui est un organe médiatique 100% noir, universel, qui couvre les nouvelles non seulement des États-Unis, mais partout à travers le monde, l'Afrique et les Caraïbes. Donc, encourager définitivement. Et pour ceux et celles qui aimeraient aider la Nation d'Islam, non seulement comme supporteurs externes, mais qui aimeraient rejoindre les rangs des FOI, comme le frère David l'a dit, non seulement dans les Caraïbes, mais ici à Montréal, nous avons un travail dans les rues de Montréal. Nous savons qu'il y a un problème de gang en ce moment et nous sommes prêts à aller dans la communauté pour ce travail qui doit être fait auprès de nos jeunes. Et donc, voici une courte vidéo qui vous montre à quoi ressemble le travail des FOI, Fruit of Islam.
Is a need in our community for a universal change. And it has to start with the man. Being a man of God means being a man possessed of the knowledge, the spirit, and the power of God, anointed to do his will. To build a people, you first must make man. Every man, no matter what his color, no matter what his race, every man, in order to be a man, must be a man of God, or he's not a man at all. Let us make man.
Donc, si vous êtes intéressé par le travail que nous faisons dans la communauté, eh bien, vous êtes les bienvenus. Nous voulons réformer et transformer l'homme noir, mais nous ne serons nulle part sans la femme noire. Donc, pour nos sœurs qui se demandent quelle est l'armée des femmes noires, et le frère David nous parlait justement de l'importance. Une nation ne peut pas s'élever au-delà de la condition de sa femme. Nous avons les Vanguard MGT. Et donc, voici un aperçu du travail qui est fait dans la communauté avec nos puissantes sœurs.
We don't sleep when the sun goes down. We don't waste no precious time. All my friends in the loop, making up for teenage crime. Making up for teenage crime. We don't sleep when the sun goes down. We don't waste no precious time. All my friends in the loop, making up for teenage crime. Don't go away.
Maintenant, nous savons que tous les Noirs, selon la première constitution, sont des Haïtiens. Et frère Gino Hicks, je ne sais pas si tu peux te mettre hors de mute, mais quelles sont, selon la première constitution, les caractéristiques d'un vrai Haïtien?
Les qualités d'être un Haïtien, article 9, nul n'est digne d'être bon Haïtien s'il n'est pas bon père, bon fils, bon époux et surtout bon soldat.
Bon soldat, exactement. Donc, nous devons redresser notre peuple, non pas avec des armes charnelles, mais avec les armes de l'esprit et tout en formant le corps et l'esprit pour ressusciter notre peuple. Et en dernier lieu, nous invitons tous ceux et celles qui aimeraient participer au cercle d'études L'amélioration de soi, la base du développement communautaire, tous les vendredis sur Zoom. Et nous allons très bientôt revenir en personne au 3737 Crémazie, qui est un complexe d'entreprises noires de notre cher frère Franz Saint-Élémy. Un très bel endroit. Donc, très bientôt, vous aurez l'invitation pour participer en hybride, soit par Zoom ou en personne au 3737. Et vous pouvez, bien entendu, aller sur le store.finalcall.com pour commander les livres de l'honorable Elijah Mohammed et de l'honorable ministre Louis Farrakhan. Et vous pouvez aller, pour ceux qui parlent français, j'ai 3 livres d'écrits et ils sont disponibles sur le site web de l'Académie X, qui est présidée par notre frère Gino Hicks. Et d'ailleurs, nous vous invitons tous, vous avez entendu parler de la Constitution, la première Constitution de l'Empire de la liberté, l'Empire créé par Jean-Jacques Dessalines. Vous pouvez aller sur akadx.com pour commander un de ces différents livres. Le 3e, Où sont les Noirs dans les Saintes Écritures, sera bientôt disponible. Mais vous pouvez également vous inscrire à un cours, en fait plusieurs cours, mais notamment un cours sur l'identité haïtienne qui, bien entendu, par extension, est lié à l'identité noire. Donc, nous vous invitons à visiter akadx.com et inscrivez-vous aux différents cours et aux différentes formations. Et sur ce, nous vous remercions tous, très chers frères et sœurs, d'être venus aujourd'hui. Nous remercions à nouveau notre frère, docteur, ministre, représentant des Caraïbes, de l'Est, de l'honorable ministre Louis Farrakhan, le frère David Mohammed, que nous allons très bientôt rappeler parmi nous. Et sur ce, nous allons commencer comme nous allons terminer comme nous avons commencé, c'est-à-dire en prière. Frère Daniel X, si tu nous ferais l'honneur.
Bien sûr. Donc, merci pour la présentation. Merci d'avoir assisté à la présentation. Je vais vous demander de prendre la position la plus optimale pour la prière, s'il vous plaît. Prayer. Au nom d'Allah, le bienfaiteur, le miséricordieux. Gloire à Allah, le Seigneur des mondes, le bienfaiteur, le miséricordieux, maître du jour du châtiment. C'est toi que nous servons et c'est ton secours que nous implorons. Guide-nous sur le droit chemin, le chemin de ceux à qui tu as accordé des faveurs, non pas ceux sur qui descend la colère, ni ceux qui s'égarent après avoir entendu tes enseignements. Lui, Allah, est unique. Allah est celui dont tout dépend. Il n'engendre pas et il n'est pas engendré. Et personne n'est comme lui. Je témoigne que nul autre qu'Allah ne mérite d'être servi ou adoré. Et je témoigne que l'honorable Elijah Mohammed est son véritable serviteur et dernier apôtre. Amin.
So, Minister David, thank you once again for your time. I know this is your second teaching today. Merci à tous et à toutes d'être venus aujourd'hui et nous avons bien hâte de vous revoir très bientôt. Et sur ce, nous vous disons assalamu alaikum, que la paix soit avec vous. Aïe Bobo, aïe Oshenago. Donc, bonne soirée, mes frères et sœurs. Merci encore.
Wa alaikum salam, sir.
Wa alaikum salam.
Wa alaikum salam, Aïe Bobo.
Aïe Bobo.
Alaikum salam, family.